Hey, everybody, welcome back. I'm Emily Moyer. Michael Wan, my good friend and co host, is here with me this morning. This is episode number 23 of Project Kids. Michael, good morning. It's Tuesday morning.
It's Tuesday morning. So they call this inside baseball. And inside baseball means like when someone who's an insider tells you what's going on that you don't know. So I'm going to do a little inside baseball for the folks who are watching this at home. Like about 5 to 8 minutes ago, you and I were talking. We have an entire conversation about whether or not you're wearing happy pants or crabby pants, and whether or not like there's such a thing, because it's all relative to the position of the person who's judging the quality of pants you're wearing. So when we had that conversation, like the premise was a little bit that perhaps Emily's wearing crabby pants this morning, that perhaps she is. And when she came in, I kind of saw it. Like I saw where that analysis came from. But in the course of our conversation, from 6 minutes ago to recording, like there has been a shift, and not like the shift like you see on like the MK Ultra CNN news where the person's like this and then they snap on. It wasn't that shift. It was a gradual shift. And so what I'm assuming, this is what I think happens. This is what I think happens, Emily. I could be wrong because I've been wrong before, but I think that as the moment of truth approaches, as the time when we click and we make the magic, which only is truly experienced when people are watching, those pants change themselves. And I got to see it happen. Today of all days, the day of what is known by some folks as the winter solstice. Well, so hello, welcome. Thank you for having me. I appreciate that you changed your pants. Or your pants changed
you. I think there's a truth to what you say. And I don't know if that comes from the early Hollywood training and, you know, when action hits, you got to go. Or if it's from sort of being a gamer and rising when it's time to compete at the gymnastics meet, even though you had a shitty warm up, right? Or if it's just your presence is so delightful that it automatically shifts my mood. Or if it's just saying what was true for me, right, about what was going on, just moved that energy through. Yeah, right.
Probably a combination of them all, but that last one seems to make a lot of sense to me.
So I seem to be going through something as of late. Like I'm generally very, very chipper, like chipper in the morning, chipper singing songs and dancing around all the time. And I seem to be going through something that is like, I could see how, like to the people around me, the perception might be that Emily's crabby, right? Or whatnot. And maybe I don't know if it's so much that I'm crabby as it is I seem to be going through some sort of shift.
Let me ask you a real quick question. When someone says to you that you're crabby or something like that, how do you respond to that internally? Like, does that trigger anything, or is it water off a duck's back? Like, how is that received?
I'd say on average neutral. Sometimes it's obviously true and I won't deny it. Other times, maybe I haven't recognized it yet or whatever. And so it's like shocking to hear that. Or whatever. And then other times you're just, you know, you feel oppositional to whoever's saying that. But like, I don't know that I have a big response to that. I think what's going on for me I just had an awareness of it last week and becoming more aware of it is I'm a little bit more like in my own mind and in my own head than I usually am. Like usually I'm very chattery, right? And I want to talk about every thought that's coming through, or I just am outwardly expressing something, whether it's just whistling or singing songs or chatting or whatever. And this right now, I guess I'm having some thoughts in my mind that like are of a nature that like either of a nature that I'm not sure what I think about them. And so I'm not ready to talk about them, or the way that they're organized in my head doesn't quite make sense to me yet. And so parlaying that out isn't as easy as what I generally say. And the last time I went through this, it's not unknown territory for me. What's unknown territory for me about this is not being a drug addict when that's happening, right? Like I used to spend a lot of time in my own head, in my own mind, in my own thoughts, and not wanting to be disturbed by anything like while I'm in that space. But I wasn't in a good space. And now I am in a good space. And I'm going through not exactly the same, but maybe a sort of similar, there's something I'm trying to straighten out in my head, right? And I'm not clear exactly on what it is. And it makes me sort of insulated from, when I'm in the process, it's sort of, I'm insulated from what's going on outside of me. And so then when that is penetrated or poked at, it's kind of like, trying to take the baby chick out of its egg too fast or something.
Right,
like
yeah.
that.
It's like no one likes to be waking up when they're middle of the dream.
Right.
Like when they're dreaming, like in the literal sense of being asleep. Like I'm not implying that. So let me ask you this. When did you feel this kind of shift to being in this space?
I'd say it's been within the last, I don't know, maybe sometime in November. When did you go to Dallas or Plano?
11, 17.
I'd say sometime in November, maybe early November.
When she got a break from me.
No, it was actually like a little bit before that. So I'd say as we move into fall, and fall is not my favorite.
And it's been consistent. It's been consistent since you like that mid-November sort of awareness of when the shift.
Like a frequent feeling. I wouldn't say it's every day or all day or whatever.
Right.
But that it's been like, it's something it may have been there before, but I wasn't aware of it. It's just, I've become aware of this. Right. Like and at a certain point a few weeks ago, I realized, I'm going through something. Like I usually think of myself as like, I'm fine, I'm good, I'm very well adjusted and emotionally balanced and all that kind of stuff. And right now I'm going through something. Nothing is wrong per se, but I'm having an expansion in my awareness of certain feelings or certain thoughts and how they affect me, or, whatever that I either was not aware of before, or some part of me was aware and I was choosing to ignore. And now I'm ready to sort of, include them in things or whatnot.
Right.
And the other thing is that was about the time the weather changed. And historically, like I've never, fall is my least favorite season.
How much of a change in seasons like does Austin have from summer to fall? So like is it as extreme as the East Coast, like when you were in West Virginia, or is it somewhere between that and where you were in Los Angeles?
Somewhere between that and where I was in Los Angeles. Like the trees, it definitely looks like fall outside. Like the trees are all,
it's fall.
Shades of orange and brown. The part that's different than back east is like, we have some days that are cold and we still have some days that feel very like early spring or whatever. And sometimes within the same day. So temperature wise, it's back and forth. But in terms of like the quality of the air and what the sun feels like and what it looks like outside, it's fall. So historically, fall was always like the most challenging season for me. Okay. And then like when I completely stepped out of life, like I just didn't leave my room. So it almost didn't matter what season it was outside. And then when I kind of reemerged back into reality, I had like gone through like a metamorphosis.
Right.
We'll talk about that later. And I was different. And so I was definitely much better than I had been, which felt like I was, that everything was okay or good or whatever. And now like I've been a well person for quite a long time. Right. And so I'm starting to have, it's like before it was just, I was fucked up and then I was better. Right. And now I'm used to being better. So now I'm noticing, I think, more of the small fluctuations and changes in what I think about, how I feel and whatnot. And, like I'm one of those people that I'll just be honest, I'm perfectly happy for it to just be spring and summer all the time. So this could also be correlated with the season, but maybe this is actually a healthy thing. I do think that really fall and winter are supposed to be a little bit about cocooning and hibernating and sort of pulling into yourself before you bloom again in the spring. So I think this is all totally normal. Like I'm not of the feeling that there's anything wrong or whatnot. It's just been either a really long time or never before that I have been so conscious and aware as I'm going through the process and really thinking about what some of the thoughts and feelings I'm having mean, both like at the moment and then in the larger picture. And so I actually think it's probably a really positive sign of like maturity and coping with the ebbs and flows and cycles and seasons of life and whatever, and relationships and work and whatnot. And it's just something that I had avoided or evaded based on the circumstances of my life up to this point. And so while it's challenging, it also feels really important. And so I'm not trying to make it stop or avoid it or anything like that. I'm letting myself be in it. And I also recognize that it's a different iteration of me for the people around me. And so I'm trying to clarify to them that like, there's not something wrong and this isn't about you. Right. But, I'm used to being like the one who's generally like happy and content most of the time. And other people may be a little bit more up and down. And so I understand that like that can be confusing for the people around me and even confusing for me at times. But, it's like, I think it's important. This time feels very important to me for some reason. So I'm just chilling, sitting with it. And how are you, my friend?
Can I respond? There are a whole bunch of things I want to just kind of respond on, just comment upon.
Yeah.
The first one is because it's fascinating to hear what you say about autumn and winter. And the first thing I want to say is you are 100% correct that the seasons have a quality. And of course, like as you described, like the going into winter, like that's the most natural thing in the world. Like that will happen like just by being by your eyes. And so that's so true. But what I'm finding so fascinating by listening to this, and this is like less personal, this is more like scientific and queer inquiry, is I live on the East Coast. I live in the Mid-Atlantic, which is like, this is like really right in the heart of four
Real
seasons.
fall. Yeah.
And it is just, it's almost like in my mind, like at points of time with like all sorts of people, at some point I've heard the conversation happen, like, what's your favorite season? And it's almost universal. It's almost universal that every time I've ever heard that question, I don't hear it that much, but I hear enough that I remember it, that everyone says fall. Everyone loves fall. Like, and I've thought about that. Like, why would fall be? And so to hear what you had to say, but like, you know what? I can't stand fall. And then also thinking about like just all of the, one of the personal, but then all like your own inner world, but then your own inner world as it relates to like where you were raised and all that sort of stuff. I find that fascinating. And so now I know for certain that loving fall is not a universal sort of thing.
Yeah. And I think, I did have I had 2 years of living in the Mid-Atlantic, and they were challenging for me, really challenging at that time of year. Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of interesting. Now, the second thing I want to say that's interesting is I don't remember when it began for me, but if you recall, for probably the last, during the fall, I was in like a space, I wouldn't say exactly in terms of like how I would describe what it feels like, but in the general sense of like, okay, I'm going through something. There's something internal which is happening, which I'm taking a look at. And in my mind, and particularly as it was building internally as like an internal pressure, like it felt like an internal pressure, it was lining up with my birthday. Like if you go back and you think about like, and now in context of what I was saying, like in the weeks leading up to it, like, oh, he's saying that, but also knowing like in his internal world, like he's feeling a growing pressure. And, I would couch it. I couched it culturally and like kind of astrologically, if you will. But nonetheless, like I was feeling that exact same thing. But I always also tied in, I didn't tie in the seasons, but I was tying in what's going on in the world right now. But what I do want to say, what I think is interesting is, for me, it all dissipated shortly after my birthday. Or at least the pressure. It doesn't mean, and I'm in total agreement with you. Like there's a difference between like things feeling uncomfortable and things being like wanting to avoid. It was just like, all right, this is different. And like that pressure disappeared, but the way you described it before in your own inner world of there are things which I'm looking at, maybe new things or things in a new way, which need to be incorporated. And I don't know how to incorporate, like it's fitting in. Like that was very much what that process felt like me. I don't think I would have described it that way, but hearing you say that, I'm like, yeah, I know that.
Yeah. So actually it's interesting that you say that. Cause Laura and I had a conversation about this the other day, because obviously I chat with you every week, obviously on the show and other times too. And I've been very aware and present to what's been going on with you and having my own thoughts about it. And you and I have chatted about it. And sometimes, and having a conversation with her about you helped me to explain to her some of my thoughts about what's going on for myself, because I had witnessed this sort of in you. And I recognized that, oh, I'm going through a similar kind of thing, slightly different, as we're different people and whatnot. And one of the things that I explained to her, and you can kind of tell me if some of this is right, is like, there's this is not a complaint on any level. It's a little bit challenging to be someone like you or someone like me, both for us and for the people around us who care for us and love us and whatnot, right? Because we do a kind of a different thing with our minds and our thoughts and our time than your average person either does or is as aware of as we are, or sort of, you know, we're just a kind of unusual types, right? We're obviously both like intellectuals, but not in the way that most people think of intellectuals. We're not college professors or, you know, like have these, you know, whatever kind of things. Although we're as learned in our topics as people who are called professors are in their topics, right?
And our topics are the Wikipedia and the internet.
Right. And also we both have a part of us that has a very, very childlike quality. We like to play outside. And I think the thing that I identified most is both you and I like to have quite a lot of time to dawdle around in our thoughts and not have to stop doing that to do some other thing that's required of us. Mm-hmm. And while we both recognize that we're grown-ups and we have responsibilities, we're constantly in this tug of war or struggle between that which we need to do to be responsible for both ourselves and the people who we're connected to, and feeling the freedom to explore what we're thinking about both in our own minds and then also like out in the world in a way that doesn't feel compressed by time, right? And that it's, you know, and also you and I are both very kinesthetic. So we have a physical a need for a certain kind of like amount of movement, and that movement to go along with this dawdling around in our thoughts. That is not, you know, I'm sure everybody has some things kind of like this, but it's really crucial to us being able to do what we do. And also it's sometimes something that other people don't understand and think that it's part of like not wanting to grow up or not being realistic about how the world really works or this, that, and the other thing. And each of us having a sense inside of us, though, that this process for us is really important. Right. And so constantly in that sort of managing like the outer world and the inner world and then that space in between, which is where this kind of really interesting thoughts come from on a certain level, like the friction that is created. And that, you know, so we just had an interesting conversation about that. Does that resonate sort of for you as?
Yeah, completely. And the one thing which I don't know if you implied this, and I'm just going to say it more precisely. It's like the fact that we do have this regular thing, like communication and talking about these things and kind of like feeding off of a similar internal inner landscape, is that it links in. Like, yeah. You know, all human beings like link in with another human being, like to a certain degree, but there's a certain level of resonance in the fact that you and I process so similarly. And so somehow or another that heightens or exasperates or push and pulls, like, you know, well, whatever that may be. Like, so of course, like if one kind of sees something, or you see someone working through something, like it's naturally internalized and then you experiences it well, or vice versa. So that, yeah, that is very accurate. And I would say the thing which I would say is most accurate is, for me, what you said is the recognition that I don't think it's easy for other people to be around our individual cycles, because our individual cycles may seem is hard for someone who's not used to those cycles to be around. And I would also say this: you kept using the phrase to think or do the things that we do. And I look at it like, you know, we're describing the same thing, but my syntax would be a little bit different. And I would say for us to be who we are.
Yeah.
Like I don't know how to not do this. And I know it ain't easy. And if I don't do this, like there's like, it's got to happen. If this doesn't happen, then yeah. And so, I think that's probably true for everyone for their own internal world. So like, I'm not saying we're unique that way, but what's unique is the fact that we're very similar in that our internal worlds are very similar.
Well, it's like, I mean, I think it just looks a little different. Like, I think everybody goes through something similar. It has something like this, but for the things that they need to be themselves and to be okay are just a little different than the ones for you and I. And that's largely based probably on our backgrounds and some of the things we've been involved in. You can bring in genetics or this and that and whatnot. But I had this interesting, and I think the reason that we're so insistent on that it has to be this way, right? Even though it does create chaos, both for us and our people around us sometimes. I had this interesting conversation with Elisa, my friend Elisa. She has one of the craziest sort of MK Ultra stories you can imagine, in a way darker, obviously darker kind of sense than anything that you and I feel like for ourselves. But she certainly understands all the processes very well. And she and I had this really interesting conversation one day where it was like, the thing that's important in this life is to, like, there's a mistake we've made in all of the other lives, right? And this time, the most important thing is to not make that mistake. There's like a choice point that sort of comes, right? And the one you make this time really means, not that it didn't mean something before, but I think the choice for me, and I'm not going to speak maybe for you as well, is in other lifetimes, we've pushed that thing about ourselves aside to accommodate other people or to make it easier for us to be in the world and not have to go through some of those discomforts with people. And it can't happen this time, right? If whatever we're doing here is going to be, something special or something different, or the thing that you or I or whatever wanted or needed to be, like this sort of protection of this process or this quality of the way that you or I do things has to stay intact. And that means, and protect it like the way somebody would protect their child or their family or whatever. Like, this feels important to me. This feels like I'm having a huge growth in this lifetime. And I have to make sure I don't cut it short by, sort of doing something that's just going to make it easier for me to be in the world.
Yeah.
So yeah. And also I recognize that sometimes it makes it very difficult, obviously, for my father at times in my life, and my sister and the people who love me. And right now, sometimes for this one, who I love very much, but sometimes I can just see her. She's like, oh, fucking, she's doing it again or whatever. Right. But, it feels important to me, and I'm sure that something similar or the same for you.
Yeah. Yeah. So that being said, today was a real kind of interesting day for me. I mean, it's 10:40 my time, and a lot has occurred already.
All right, fill us in.
All right, so this is going to be a while. So how about this? I'll talk for a little bit, and then you talk, and then we'll go back and forth like we would. So this is going to be a continuation. So this is going to begin. I'm really going to start this 2 days ago, I think it was. I went to Mr. Rich's. You know Mr. Rich's?
I know Mr. Rich. Yeah.
And he was having a sauna. So he's got the best sauna, right? So we go, and like, it's a whole ordeal. Like, Jenny and I arrived around 4:00, and like, you got to get there's a wood burning oven, for lack of a better word, underneath the sauna. So we're putting the wood in and lighting it. And it's like, it's an old Rick. It's a thing. It takes about an hour. And then what we did not know is that we were going to have other guests there. So the other guests were there. This guy, Zach, and Pamela. So it was Jenny, me, Zach, Pamela, and Mr. Rich. We all go in and we start talking. Zach's one of the most interesting folks I know. Younger guy, never wears shoes, like literally is Johnny Appleseed. Like he's like is knowledgeable about biochemistry as like someone who works for Dow Chemical, and he just walks around and he takes it upon his life is really understanding both the biochemistry and the geography and the geology of the area, and he manages woodscapes. So I start talking to him, and he's telling me how he came across more or less it was given to him, like how this guy supports himself financially is like one of the biggest mysteries, right? Mm-hmm. But somehow he just got 10 acres of land. He got 10 acres of friggin' land, like given to him. All right. And he's telling me it's right on the Susquehanna, and it's right by where the petroglyphs. And he's like, I'm going to go and take a morning canoe trip onto the petroglyphs on the solstice. And I would love it if you came with me.
Oh,
and I was like, MFer, that sounds so good. But then at first I'm like, I'm all in. That would be 2 days after the sauna. We're in the sauna, all this sort of stuff. We're eating a meal afterwards and so forth. And so I'm like, yeah, but I need to go home and check my calendar. Like I totally forgot that on Tuesday mornings that this is what I do. Like as regular as this is, it's still, but I don't see it written on a piece of paper. I have no idea that this is what's happening in 2 days. So I go and I look at that and I got something else going on at 1 o'clock today. And I got something else going on at 3. And then before at 9 o'clock, there's something going on at my children's school. And so I'm like, I can't, I don't really, I don't think I can do this, because I was going to drive down, stay at his property where there's a 250-year-old house, which is where he stays, and then get into the river like at 4 a.m. in a canoe, and then canoe out and like grab these boulders and climb on it. He's like telling me, he's like, yeah, you know, usually he's giving me all the warnings. I'm like, all right, like I'm just kind of laughing. I'm like, I'm going to have to back out of this. I'm going to have to back out of this because it doesn't make sense for like 10 different reasons. From 10 different reasons, like as much as I want to do this, I'm not going to do that. But what does make sense, and what that did make sense, and I used to do this a lot, and I haven't done this for a while, but there was a particular place where I would always go for the sunrises at the solstice. Like this was my thing, and I haven't done it for a while. Like that was before any of the Susquehanna stuff. Like I would go and do this sort of thing. And so it's like, then all of that happened. So I reincorporated, and that's how I started my day. So I'm going to pause right there, and I'm going to allow you to do what you got to do. And then when it comes back to me, I'm going to pick up from there.
So I like this Zach person. I like the way you described him. And I was trying to sort out like what was going on with him, right? You alluded to the fact that you have no idea how this person actually makes a living or, you know, survives in the world or whatever. And then you said that he lives in a 250-year-old house is that on the 10 acres, or he just bought 10 acres?
It's on the 10 acres.
Okay.
It's on the 10 acres.
So like I don't know what the house is made of. Have you been to the house?
Nope.
Okay. Like,
but I know the area. I have a general idea of what it's going to look like. So
is it going to be stone? Is the house going to be a lot of stone?
I would imagine there'd be stone with it. Yeah.
So my guess is going to be that this is like the house itself has access to other temporal realities.
Without a doubt.
And that he is transacting in those realities in terms of, right? Because remember, so Season 2 OA, the things that connect the dimensions are spaces, houses, buildings, or whatever, right? And so when he goes to acquire property, or when he's going to make a living or whatever, he's doing that stuff in the space or the time where like work was a reasonable thing, right? Like when a house costs $10 and, you know, a meal costs 50 cents or whatever, he has figured out, and that is why he wears bare feet. Because his feet are his connection to this sort of temporal portal, right? Kind of thing that he's moving, like all that stuff is like all the realities that he has access to are anchored somehow in the connection between his skin and the ground below him, right? And he's moving just like he moves. Obviously, he's moving from place to place linearly from his house to Mr. Rich's or whatever, but he also is moving through the different layers of the cake. And that some of his most meaningful transactions in terms of like that which is belongs to him. And when I say belong, I don't just mean in a property sense, but it includes that as well. That which is important to him and that he has ownership over, like is of a multidimensional nature.
Without a doubt. The area where he is, it's right on the Susquehanna, but it's about an hour from where I am. It's not that far distance wise. It takes an hour to get there because there's just no roads. Like there's no direct, that part of the river. I know 2 other people who live there in that general area. And this is how he described that general area. He's like, this guy has literally walked all over North America. He's like with no shoes. Like this is how he meets life. And he says that he has never seen a single place on the East Coast which offers the opportunity of disappearing in the way that this place does. Like that's how he described it. And he's being totally literal. And what's most interesting is having discovered my own Juan family name background. The Juans lived in this place 200, like in this general area about 200 years ago. And so like, I've got like a little bit of a connection there, but I'm also listening to his story. So Zach is, just to give you a little bit more of a picture. As I said, he's 30. He is incredibly intellectual, so knowledgeable on so many things, like everything from like Native American traditions and cultures to understanding everything about the ecosystem to like all these different sort of things. And he has a mystical side, but his primary lens is first the intellectual sort of thing. And so we meet in these really interesting conversations. He's a real good looking guy, but at the same time, he's real scruffy looking. Like he's got that mixture of like, I'm going to say this totally funny when I say this. I'm being funny when I say this. He's like a young Charles Manson. Like he's got, you know what, when you see young Charles Manson, that's him. That he looks like that archetype, but he does not fit that. In a certain way he does, but in a certain way he doesn't. I would be clear with that.
Okay, but so it's funny, while you were talking about this, what he said about the land and about the wand.
And let me just say this one thing before you say that, because it might add to it. The house he's living in was a commune used as a commune for 10 years in the 70s. So go on.
Okay, so as you were talking, I immediately began thinking, before you ever said Charles Manson, thinking of Chatsworth, because there's all these stone houses there. And if there was a place sort of in Los Angeles that you could kind of disappear in, or where there's these kind of access to stuff, it would be in Chatsworth. And remember, the Manson Tunnel and all of their activity took place in Chatsworth, right? And if, whether it be because of the rock there, that there was this ability for moving between dimensions, or whether it be because of a particle accelerator, or those rocks develop where there is particle accelerators, this guy was particularly good at moving through the dimensions, and that's why he was attracted to that place. And the story that we get about him is, you know, we don't know all the other layers of this person, right? We don't know what they were in all of these other realities that they explored, kind of thing. And also, like, we don't know, we're not clear on who he was before something got their hands on him and started to try and, you know, manipulate something for a purpose, right? But I have a lot of questions about the story we've all been fed about the Mansons and all of this kind of stuff, because again, it's another one of these stories like, you know, Rocketdyne is like leaking radiation up there that is designed to keep people from accessing a certain point on the land. Oh, that's where all the crazy Manson shit happens. So people think that there's going to be evil spirits and ghosts and whatever. But quite literally, if the stuff there is an interdimensional portal, that's what they really don't want people going there. So they'll make up all these stories. It's radiation leaking. You're going to get cancer. Charles Manson kills people, whatever, right? Anything to keep people away. So I think there's something about, you know, I mean, some of those looks aren't that far off from like Jesus and whatever else as well, where there's like this person that is kind of scruffy looking, but obviously highly intellectual and thoughtful and in touch with the land and whatever, right? I think this is kind of, I mean, we've all seen people like this before in our life, right? The sort of, you know, typical description of like the barefoot hippie that kind of, wow. You there, Michael? Wow. All right. Well, we're going to push pause and wait for Michael to come back, but that was certainly fascinating. Well, that was something special, wasn't it?
Don't you talk about Manson.
Right. So we're all familiar with this kind of character. We bump into them occasionally. We see them and it's like, what's going on with this person? They look sort of outside of space and time. They look like they like wandered into the wrong stage set or something like that, you know, kind of thing. And there's something, it's an archetype, right? It's a particular archetype.
Oh, without a doubt. So that's why I wanted to go and tell you, so you can paint this better picture. He fits that archetype.
Yeah.
At least in appearance, he looks like that. He looks like the young, handsome. I don't think I've ever said that to him, but next time I see him, I would say it to him like a compliment. I want to see how he receives it.
I think sometimes you should just straight up ask him if he's a time traveler.
Yeah, I'm like, I have not seen you and Charles Manson in the same room at the same time. So there is a good chance, or there's a possibility that you two could be one and the same. Right. You know what I mean? Like, or whether it's the exact same, or whether like this is a type or an iteration, right? Something that is generated when this balance of
intellect and in touch with the ground kind of thing.
Right.
And then it also makes me think about like radiesthesia, right? And the people who are doing radiesthesia and dowsing and things like that, they're looking for certain energies in the land, whether it be because they're looking for water or looking whatever. And the way he walks around, his like whole body is a detector of anomalous spots. And that's how he moves through his reality. That's how he does this world, is he's constantly sensing. It's like a dog looking for a good place to pee, right? Like he has to have his feet in touch with the ground to sense sort of where and when he is, right? And you know, and maybe that look is one that is though attracts certain attention and certain realities, kind of works in all the different layers, right?
Yes.
I don't know. I think there's realities he could wander into that if he showed up in a suit and tie, he might be kicked out. And if he showed up without clothes on, right, might get kicked out. But that sort of like that the archetype we're talking about seems to be able to exist in every reality, at least that, the kind of thing. So yeah. All right.
So that wasn't going to work out. I wasn't going to go with Zach, but at some point our paths will cross again. And our paths have crossed in very, very interesting ways. Like, and I'll just say this one thing. Back when I was working that one fall, it was started on Labor Day to probably just about my birthday. And I guess this may have been 2019, is when I worked on that Amish farm.
Okay.
And one day in particular, like for some reason, I ended up having to walk home. Like something was going on in my life, and it's probably about a 4-mile walk, but it's like going to back farm roads and it's real hilly, and I was really tired. And for whatever reason, like I got to walk home, and I was like in a mood where I was like, all right, I guess, now's the time I got to walk home, after the long day. And I hadn't seen him for a long time. Zach pulls up on this like backwoods Amish road, and he drives a Ford Escort station wagon. Like, I don't think they've made a Ford Escort station wagon since 1992. Like that's the newest it could possibly be. And it's just packed with Zach stuff. Like Zach's got like science equipment and like out wilderness equipment and like hippie equipment all in. And he's like, hey buddy, you need a ride? And I'm like, you're a godsend, Zach. And what happened was the entire car was filled up with the exception of the space behind his seat. So I had to sit behind him. And for some reason, he's like, oh, the door's real tricky. And he's like, let me open it for you. So he gets out of the car and he opens it up like a limousine driver. Like I'm sitting behind him and I'm just laughing. I'm like, this is the weirdest friggin' thing, because Charles Manson, is giving me a ride in my house. So I've got that connection with Zach, but bringing it back to the present moment. So I knew that I wasn't going to be able to go on this adventure with him, but my sense is I'm going to probably do the summer solstice, which that's a much more appealing scenario of going out. Like, it's 25 degrees out at that time in the morning. Like, so anyway, so I'm like, but I want to do something. And I used to do this. And so it makes sense for me to go to High Point Scenic Vista. And we've talked about High Point many, many times. And so I have been there. In fact, I remember being at High Point Scenic Vista. It may have been 2012 or 13 when was there an eclipse? Maybe it was just a full moon. I wasn't that as familiar then as I am now with following what was going on in the sky, but I remember watching on a significant morning, the sunrise and all this sort of stuff. It may have, I think it was 2012, to be quite honest. I think it may have been 2012. So anyway, so I'm there again this morning. And, if the last time I was there for a sunrise equinox or solstice morning was 2012, I'm kind of thinking about that. And in fact, my mind's been building to it. I got piqued. My interest was piqued because of my conversation with Zach. And I'm thinking about going there and what time I need to go and all of these sort of things. And then I'm like, well, what am I going to bring? It's going to be cold. And I'm walking through that whole sort of experience. And at the same time, and this is slightly different, but this is going to loop back into it. I've been reading for over the past year to my boys the book series, which is called the Wheel of Time. It's got all right. It's like a 17 book series. We began it about a year ago.
I remember.
And we just found out recently that they made like Amazon made a TV series based upon this book series. Like in the same way, like what happened with The Man in the High Castle. I don't know who did that. That may have been Netflix, whatever. So we're like, let's watch this. And this started like maybe about 3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago, that we started watching their 5 episodes. And it's been fascinating to watch because we're reading the book right now and it's fresh in our memory. And we're like, hey, that was in the book, but that's not in the book. And they're learning a lot about propaganda and they're learning about like politicizing, like all of these sort of things. So on that level, it's been fascinating. It's been kind of interesting to see how they are trying to present what these fantasy scenes are in the book. So there was in the last episode we saw which just was probably a day or two ago, like in between, they showed what was described in the book as a waygate.
Okay.
And so what a waygate is this kind of like mystical sort of passageway, which is ancient, that you can have access to. And then you go into the Waygates and you come out where like every step in the Waygates is equal to 100 miles on Earth. And like every second it's got all of this time space distortion. You know, it's all the stuff which we're talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yes. Okay. So we could see both the books in there, and we could also see how the TV show is painting their picture of how the book is presented. Okay.
Yep.
So I want to go and show you something really specific. So if I could get the screen share.
Yep.
Because I got it all. All right. So the first one would be, so just like what you're doing is, where are we with that? Give me 1 second to find it. Where is it? Okay, there we go. So
this is fascinating that you're bringing this to the table today because of what's been going on for me. So this is
okay. So perfect. I go, we're watching this show. Sometimes you can't find it on screen share. Here it is. It was down low. All right. So these are screenshots for how the show presented the Waygates. They look like this. And then this opens up like I couldn't find a picture where they show it, but in the demonstration in the TV show, this opens up to be a doorway and you go into this like other world. But right now, these are just the markers. And then when I was typing in Waygate, this was another image. And the reason why I'm showing you this is probably about like 4 years ago, before I started reading the book, I created this image of what the Waygate looks, or not the Waygate, for something with Susquehanna Alchemy. I was using it for the beginning of a presentation. And where I set all this up was on top of High Point, the place where I went today. So like I knew I was going to go there. I've been there before. It's a little bit close to the petroglyphs where me and Zach were going to go. But I'm like, I already have identified this in like years before I thought of the Waygate, that this location is the Waygate. So let me go and show you. This is where, if I've done this map many times or shown this is where High Point is. It's perfectly balanced between these. There's actually 4 colleges. And then if you were to zoom in on this map, here's the Susquehanna River. I live right here. You can't even see where it says Millersville because it's underneath this white line, which is the 40th parallel. It is directly due east on the 40th parallel. This is what it looks like on Google Earth. And so I climbed up to the top of it. It's not a climb, it's a walk up. And it's called High Point because it's at the highest point. And then you have this setup. And then right here is another smaller circle with a compass rose, And it tells you east, west, north, and south. And so I set up a seat there. I brought up the seat. The sun hasn't come up. And you could see, like, obviously this is a sun and a moon, and it's a sun and a moon. It's the same location. And I'm sitting there And I'm like, all right, this is where I'm going to be. This is where the lay gate is. This is where like Zach, all of the things we're talking about. And so that is how I started my morning, with that experience, watching the sun come up. So I'm going to pause right now. I'm going to hand it to you and let you say, like, and reflect back on all the things that you see.
Okay. So I remember when you started reading this book, because we've talked about it before, these books with your son. And it relates to some stuff that I'm going to probably share, like in the second segment. I'm just going to come with the part that really relates to some of the things you just showed right now. So first of all, that high point that you show, also remember we looked at that one spot near the river here in Austin when we were there with Masaki that looks almost exactly like that has the text kind of thing on top, has a lot of those same things there. So when Laura and I were walking the other day and having this conversation about me through the, like looking at myself through the lens of discussing how things like what you've been going through or whatever, we decided, it was freezing outside. We decided to go for a walk instead of for a run. And we walked from our house on the east side of Austin, all the way into Zilker Park, which is on the west side of downtown Austin. And it started to get, the conversation actually about you actually started around the point where we would have passed that sort of high point and starting to move into Barton Springs and Zilker Park. And we were having this conversation, and then we got to this bridge and we went out and stood in the middle of the bridge and looked down at the water. And we're having this conversation about the water. And this gentleman came over to us that, not Charles Manson like, but was one of these kind of characters that you're kind of not sure what's going on. Is this person homeless? Is this person not homeless? And he said,
if you saw Zach, if you were a regular person, those would be the questions that are going off in your mind.
Right. Yes. Right. And so this guy starts talking to us, and I'll be honest, I was kind of an asshole to him because I couldn't understand what he was saying. Right. And so he said something like, have you guys been over there? Have you been on the other side over there? And I was like, yes, I've been over there. He's like, you know that wall? And I'm not sure what he was saying. He's like, that wall over there, it's east and west. And I was like, okay, the wall over there is east and west. He's like, you know that wall, you've been over there, right? And I'm like, yes, I've been over there. I wasn't clear on what wall he was talking about. He's like, it's east west. And I'm just like, I wasn't getting it. And so so then Laura says, oh, that's funny because we were on East and West Street earlier today. We had gone to look at a condo on in this area of Austin that we don't normally go to. And the condo was on East Street, right? And a few blocks before East Street had been West Street. And so I think the way that it was lined up was that like there's Guadalupe, which is a main street in Austin, and the West Street is west of Guadalupe and East Street is east of Guadalupe, but they actually run north-south, right? And so it was just funny that he was saying east-west when we had this conversation about West and East Street earlier. And so like in my head, I got that connection, and he made some reference that you and I would think of as a glass bead thing. He's like, yeah, I have a way of connecting to what's going on for people when I say, but then after he went away, Laura said, no, he was trying to tell you something important. He was talking about a compass, and I wasn't really getting the compass part of this. I think we're still trying to figure out exactly what he meant, but we think what he meant was there's a wall over there that if you put a compass on it, it says that it is both east and west, right? It shows that it's pointing east and it shows that it's pointing west. I don't know that I understand how that works. I was trying to research, is it possible that the same point can show east and west? And there is some kind of weird compass called a Brunton compass that has some anomaly like that, but that didn't feel quite exactly right. Like it was almost like he was trying to alert me to the fact that there is an anomaly over there, right? There is some sort of directional or energetic vortex type of anomaly, but I wasn't getting it because I was fixated on the fact that I wasn't understanding what he was saying. Maybe he wasn't explaining himself super clearly, but I discounted him and I felt like an asshole afterwards. We tried to go back and find him kind of like we did with the bubble guy that time, right? Similar area of town, similar type of guy, didn't find him. But I came home and I started looking into this, right? Now, when you were showing me these Waygates, there's things like that all over the place in that segment of the river around Austin here, right? But I start looking, okay, let me see if I can find, because I have I'm just giving guys warning, my computer is pretty fucked up right now. It's moving really, really slowly. I can't close anything because I don't want to lose the thing that I'm looking for. So I have like 9 million windows open on my computer, right? But I go looking to find, I think he had said that the wall had a mural on it. So I go looking for like a wall near a bridge in Zilker Park that goes east-west or whatever. And I find, let me see if I can pull this up. That's not it. Let me see. Hold on, my computer is just going really, really slow. All right, so I find this, right? I find this, what am I doing? I'm really fucking my computer up here. Okay, I find this, which I thought was interesting based on things that I've been talking about and shows I've done lately. So I find this mural here, right? So there's this little train that goes through Zilker Park called the Zilker Eagle. It's like kind of like Travel Town in Griffith Park in Los Angeles. It's like a little kids train. It's not like a Amtrak train, right? And they had closed down the train. And when they had the train closed down, like the way they had sealed it looked like that Waygate thing you had shown, right? The picture on the right. But now they were opening it again, and there's this mural being worked on here. And so, of course, we have the rainbow, and we know all about the Over the Rainbow and the FPV stuff with the rainbows. And I was in the movie Rainbow. We know all about this shit, right? So we have this mural here, and I think this is the bridge and the wall he's talking about, okay? And then I go and I find further information about it. This article here, the Zilker Eagle, right? This is the, oh wait, where did the one that I was looking for go? Hold on a second. Do I have this right? Let me see if this is, no, that's the other thing. Hold on a second. Sorry, my computer is so slow. So there's a
time.
Okay, I have to figure out if it's just too many windows open or if there's something else wrong with my computer, but I decided not to try and figure it out before the show in case things went down. Right, so there's this story here about what this is, right? This train. So it's the Zilker Park Eagle mini train, right? And this piece is entitled "Reflections of You." Right, and their vision was to make everyone feel welcome by offering a journey of joy, inclusion, diversity, and celebration of light. Okay, that sounds like there's a surface level to that, but there's also like a deeper esoteric place you can go with it. The mural offers two distinct experiences for the mini train's outgoing and returning trips. Ian and Becky's art will surround riders with 14 bands of color at one end and a dazzling pot of gold at the end of the tunnel. They utilized walls, ceiling, and connected pillars, making both trips through the tunnel unique and engrossing. Right?
Who are Ian and Becky again?
They painted the mural.
They're
right?
just, is this their project? Were they hired to do, like, did they, like, why are Ian and Becky, who are these folks?
So there was like a contest, I think.
There was a contest. So they won. They put out like like this is their vision for what they would do.
Right. So
they were awarded it.
Right.
Okay.
So they created this thing, and there's some interesting things said about it, but this is the process of them doing it. Right. And it's, look at this too. It's kind of like dimensional doorways. That's one side of it. And then the other side of it looks like this.
Okay.
Right. And so it's right in this area of Zilker Park where I have the most amount of weird memories from when I lived here in 1999, some of which we've talked about before on the shows, right? It's right in that area. Here is the train near the camp in Chatsworth. Okay, so this was near the summer camp, and the summer camp is now named something that has to do with like rainbows and horizons. It's like some weird Islamic school now, right? But like, so this one right here is the one that's by the summer camp. And then this one right here is the Manson one. This is, and so I was already thinking about talking about this today, and you brought up Manson. This is the Manson tunnel, which is like a little bit of ways from where the summer camp is. This is like probably if you went in a direct line, like a mile away from, and that's where the train goes, right? So here's the Manson tunnel, right? And here's what the little train track tunnel looks like over by the summer camp, right? And hold on a second. Why isn't it? There's okay. That's a different one. Hold on a second. Where's the one that looks like the one in the summer camp? I don't know where it went. I just lost my original picture. Okay, sorry. I'm doing the best I can. But this is all Chatsworth, right? And then this is the thing here, sort of in Austin, in this area that I have all this like weird memories. And remember, like even when I have not been living in Austin, I'm having a lot of weird dreams, visions, memories, travel to other places that are taking place in this locale, right? Within the few block radius of where this is. Okay. Including right now, I'm getting Rolfing from a gentleman over there that's like helping to release some of these things from my body. Right. And this gentleman told me about this, and think about what you're talking about right now with your friend Zach and his relationship with land and measuring things and where he lives and it being the easiest place to disappear, right, or whatnot. And it felt like this gentleman was trying to point me in the direction of a place where the crossover spot is. And the way you know that you're there is that your compass points east and west at the same time. And think about
Say that again about the pointing the east and the west compass at the same time.
It's not clear to me because this is the part I didn't understand and why I got frustrated with him. The way that you know you're at one of these temporal spatial anomaly places is that the compass points east and west, or like maybe, I don't know if he was trying to say it should be north-south, but for some reason it's east-west, or that it's saying that the direction of this is both east and west. I'm not clear, but he was.
So I like this as a general idea that compasses will indicate you're at one of these places because they're going to act differently.
They're going to act funny, right?
They're going to act funny. What funny may be, we're not certain yet.
And then we think about like the old radiesthesists and some of the stuff we've talked about with biogeometry and the negative green and all of this kind of stuff. Like, right, the spaces will show up in this sort of, weird way. And that he was kind of trying to alert me to the fact that there's this spot over there, right?
Right.
I just had a thought that just kind of escaped me for a second. But this, like, it is in that same area that we have talked about over and over and over, right? So I was already closing in on it, and it's not far from that scenic vista high point sort of as well. And so we're playing with all of the same sort of themes and idea here. I had a thought that was so interesting a second ago, and it just totally went away. What's really interesting is a few years ago, there's also Griffith Park in Los Angeles has one of these little trains. It's called Travel Town. And I went there with my nephew a few years ago. And when he and I got on the train, the conductor said, "All aboard, headed to Austin," right? Of all the things they could have said, they didn't say we were going to Chicago or Kentucky or da-da-da-da-da. All aboard, headed to Austin, right? Kind of thing when I'm on the little train with Carter, And so I thought that was kind of interesting as well. There's some really interesting things in Griffith Park. We've talked about that on maybe with you or maybe with other people as very temporally anomalous, but then also look at this symbol for Zilker Park that we have up here, right? So we have a rainbow realm, right? And I just did a show recently with FPV Angel and One Conscience from the Angelic Particle Matrix. And we were talking about basically this like rainbow ring that is the sign that you're on top of one of these particle accelerators. And then of course we have the Zilker Eagle, which is the train, but this also looks like the ad for The Birds Aren't Real. Right? And if you look at what the eagle is, it's got a star and a moon as its eye and its neck, which, right? So it's pointing to something having to do with the sky as well, just like your high point also had the sun and the moon or whatnot. And we're dealing with the circle that is not closed, kind of like we've looked at the circle music group before. And the thing that is in the open spot is a pyramid or a triangle, right? So we have some interesting symbolism there as well, right? Like this would be the way particle accelerators, I think, would be sort of indicated if the FPV and them had to come up with a single sigil, right? Not with the bird necessarily, but something like that shows the sort of rainbow realm like that, right? So anyway, all these things, I mean, it's amazing that you brought up Manson, because I was already going to show you that tunnel in reaction to what this guy had told me and what I think the connection is, right? And so
there's a bunch I want to say on this. Can we take a 5-minute break and go to the bathroom, and then we'll come back and pick up?
Yep. Sounds good. All right, guys. We'll see you on the other side. Patreon.com/offplanetmedia or projectkids.locals.com. I just want to say one thing to people before we go over into the private segment. I know a lot of people receive the Project Kids stuff, but not the Playing the Glass Bead game. If you would like to receive a complimentary episode of that, to see if you would like to join us on a weekly basis for several hours a week of in-depth exploration of these sort of concurrent and alternate realities we discuss, hit me up. I'm happy to give you a complimentary episode or a day at the cafe where lots of people get together and chat about these kinds of topics. So hit me up by email, emilycmoyer@protonmail.com if you are interested in that. And for now, we will see you on the other side.
Let me also say something about that also, because I never talk about this side of what we do. You do it because you want to support us. You know, this is one of the ways which we support ourselves. So as long as we need to do this, you know, to support ourselves, to live on Earth, like, you know, this is one of the ways which Emily and I do. So anyone who does the Patreon, you know, we both benefit from that. And we're very grateful. And all the people that already do the Patreon, we're very grateful for that as well. So I wanted to say that before we cut out.
Very good. All right, guys, we will see you on the other side. Be back in a minute.